I started working nights at the hospital a few weeks ago. I was a new nurse, just out of school. My daughter needed me to make this work. I thought the job would have a steady routine, but it didn't feel right. The hospital had a busy pediatric wing, and I often walked its bright corridors. One night, I was completing my checks when I heard it. Laughter. Soft and echoing, like it belonged to children. My heart raced. I wondered if I was just tired. I stepped into the empty waiting room. It was quiet, too quiet. The nurse's station was dimly lit, casting shadows on the walls. I tried to shake off the unease. The next few nights were no better. I began to hear whispers drifting through the air, mixing with the beeping of machines. Patients talked about children they saw playing by the windows. I looked for the kids on the schedule, but there were none. Each time I heard a child's name, chills ran down my spine. It was as if the shadows held secrets. As I continued my shifts, a knot formed in my stomach. I felt watched. Cold drafts brushed against my skin, and every flicker of light had me on edge. At times, I would see shadows moving past the doors. My heart pounded with fear. One night, while checking on a young girl, she whispered, "Can you see them? They want to play." I froze. I looked outside her window, half expecting to see children running outside. Nothing but darkness greeted me. Later, as I walked down the dim hallway after tending to her, the laughter returned. It was louder, echoing off the walls. My heart raced. I turned around, and right in front of me were two small shadowy figures. I blinked, and they vanished into thin air. Maybe I imagined them. I couldn't be sure. I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But I felt a growing dread each night I returned. I often tried to focus on my duties, but the whispers and laughter always returned. One evening, after a few long hours, I sat at the nurse's station and rubbed my eyes. As I did, I heard a child's voice call my name, Jamie. I jumped. My heart raced. I looked around. No one was there. The silence that followed felt heavy. I went back to the pediatric wing, feeling more on edge. I checked on the girl again. "Did you hear that?" I asked her. She looked at me with wide eyes and nodded. "They wanted you to come play." I shook my head, trying to stay calm. It felt wrong, but I didn't want to frighten her. That night, as I walked back down the dim hallway, the laughter erupted again. This time, I couldn't ignore it. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I turned towards the source, and again those shadowy figures appeared. This time, they were closer. My breath hitched. I stepped back, and in an instant, they were gone. I need to get out of this place, I thought to myself. But I still had shifts to finish. I couldn't escape, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me in the shadows, waiting. The following night, I arrived at the hospital with a sense of dread hanging over me. This shift felt worse than the others. I barely made it through the entrance before that uneasy sensation crept back. The echo of laughter was still fresh in my mind. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on the job ahead. I started my rounds on the pediatric wing, checking vitals, checking charts, but every step felt heavy. I turned the corner near the nurse's station, and something caught my eye. A small toy lay abandoned on the floor, a tiny red truck. I picked it up, squinting at it under the harsh fluorescent light. It was dusty, like it hadn't been played with in years. I looked around, expecting to see a child nearby. There was no one. The laughter echoed in my head, louder this time. I resisted the urge to run. Instead, I placed the toy back on the desk and tried to shake off the chills racing down my back. How could there be children here? The pediatric wing was mostly quiet at night, but I could feel the weight of eyes on me. As I walked down the corridor, I checked on the young girl I'd seen before. She smiled at me, her face illuminated by the dim glow of her bedside lamp. "Did you see them?" she whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "See who?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The kids. They want you to play." Her voice was filled with enthusiasm, but I only felt more unsettled. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see shadows lurking near the windows. "It's late. You should get some rest." I quickly turned to leave, but the moment I did, I heard it again, the laughter. This time, it was different. It felt mischievous and inviting. I hesitated before stepping back into the hallway. Behind me, the girl giggled, a sound that made my heart race with panic. I walked toward the source of the laughter, moving slowly. The sound seemed to guide me, echoing through the corridors. I ended up near the playroom, a space usually sealed off at night. The door was cracked open. My curiosity clawed at me. I pushed the door open, and my breath caught. Inside, toys were scattered everywhere. The soft glow of the moonlight illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows around the walls. And then I saw them again, the shadowy figures, two small shapes darting between the tables. They paused, facing me, their eyes glowing in the dim light. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaky. I stepped back, every instinct telling me to flee. But the figures floated towards me. I could see them more clearly now. They looked like children, but there was something unsettling about them. Their features were indistinct, almost blurred, like they weren't fully there. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. Panic flooded my system. "Let me out!" I shouted, pounding on the door. The figures stopped inches from me, their laughter blending into a haunting melody that echoed in my mind. I could barely think. And then everything went dark. The laughter faded into silence, and the shadows consumed me. When I opened my eyes, the cold fluorescent light seemed to pierce through the darkness. I was back in the playroom, but something was off. The laughter was gone, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my chest. Panic clawed at me. I jumped to my feet, heart racing as I glanced around. The room appeared normal again, toys scattered across the floor, but I felt different. There was a sense of urgency, like an alarm ringing in the back of my mind. I dashed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. I rattled the handle frantically. "Help! Someone!" I shouted, my voice echoing against the walls. The only response was the distant sound of machinery from down the hall. It reminded me of how isolated I was. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. The shadows from before had vanished, but I could still feel their presence lurking at the edges of my mind. That's when I noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under one of the nearby tables. I crawled over, my heart racing with the fear that I was not alone. The paper was old, yellowed with age, and covered in childlike drawings. They depicted a group of stick figures playing together, laughter escaping their drawn mouths. A chill ran down my spine as I recognized the figures. They looked too much like the shadowy shapes I had seen earlier. "Why are you playing?" I whispered to myself in a moment of despair. Just as I started to piece together the night's events, I felt a gust of cold wind sweep through the room. It blew through my hair, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I heard a voice. Soft, like a whisper. "Play with us." My blood ran cold. I stood up quickly, shaking my head to clear it. This couldn't be happening. No. This isn't real. I shouted, cursing the situation I was in. The shadows returned, swirling just beyond my vision, taunting me. With renewed determination, I took a step back and charged at the door, slamming my shoulder against it. The impact sent a jolt through my body, but the door remained solid. Frustrated tears pricked at my eyes. Then, I heard the laughter again. More prominently, more defined. It wasn't coming from the shadows, it was coming from behind the door. I pressed my ear against it, trying to hear better. What were they saying? Come play. It was the same girl's voice from before. We want to show you. The latch clicked. I froze. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the hallway filled with shadows. The girl stood at the threshold, her eyes glimmering, a mixture of mischief and invitation. Before I could react, she waved, and the two figures appeared behind her, darting back and forth like excited puppies. Come on. She urged, a playful grin on her face. It's time for fun. Fun. I echoed, torn between fear and an impossible curiosity. This didn't feel right. What's fun about this? Instead of answering, she laughed again, a sound that echoed and twisted through the air. It was hauntingly beautiful, yet it sent shivers down my spine. The shadows inched closer, and I felt the walls closing in. I was losing my grip on reality. No, wait. I almost begged as the door began to close behind me. Just before it clicked shut, I saw a flicker of movement, another child behind her. A small boy stood there, his face shrouded in darkness, arms outstretched. Play with us, I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. The laughter surged around me, overwhelming everything. And in that moment, I realized this was just the beginning. I stood frozen at the threshold, caught between my instinct to flee and a compulsion to step forward. The shadows loomed closer, swirling like mist around the children. Their laughter rang in my ears, sweet yet unsettling. Something about their expressions made my stomach churn, a mixture of innocence and something else lurking just beneath the surface. Come and play. The girl insisted again, her voice beckoning me deeper into the hallway. It felt like a trap, but I couldn't ignore the strange pull they had on me. Where do you want to take me? I asked, trying to sound firm but failing. My voice trembled slightly, revealing my uncertainty. To the fun room, she said, her grin widening. The boy behind her jumped up and down, oblivious to my unease, urging me now with a shout. You'll love it. Just as I contemplated my escape, the walls of the playroom shifted subtly, and the shadows coiled like tendrils, inching around my feet. I was running out of time. No, I think I began, but the door behind me slammed shut, sending a vibration through my body. I turned, and the thin crack of light vanished, plunging me into semi-darkness. The laughter echoed through the hallway, growing louder. I was trapped. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the air itself was waiting for something to snap. The girl stepped forward, her face illuminated by a flickering light from somewhere down the hall. You'll have fun with us. She coaxed, her eyes locking onto mine, and I felt a rush of cold air wash over me. It felt alive with intent. In spite of myself, I took a hesitant step forward. What does fun mean to you? I asked, almost pleading for a reason, my voice sounding weak against the din of laughter. Instead of a response, they exchanged glances, an unsettling silent communication that left me more uneasy than before. Then the girl grabbed the boy's hand, and they darted down the corridor, looking back to see if I would follow. I nearly called out, but the words caught in my throat as I noticed something on the walls. More drawings, like the one I found in the playroom, but they were darker. They showed children grinning wildly, not just playing but entrapped, and the shadows around them seemed to stretch and claw at the edges. Are you coming? The girl shouted, her once inviting tone now sounding urgent. That's when I saw the flicker of motion from the corner of my eye. A shadow detached from the others, creeping toward me. My heart raced as a terrible realization settled in, it wasn't just children I was dealing with. There was something else here. Wait! I yelled, but it was too late. The children were swallowed by darkness, laughter echoing, tugging at me. I felt the cold grip of dread as I turned, ready to flee. The shadows surged faster, closing in. I had to escape. Just before reaching the door, I felt something cold brush against my neck, a whispering breath that sent chills down my spine. There's no fun in running away in that moment. Panic seized me, and I bolted full speed down the corridor, desperate to escape whatever was lurking behind me. I was determined to find an exit before I became part of their twisted playtime. I sprinted down the hallway, my footsteps pounding against the floor. The shadows were relentless, like a pack of wolves nipping at my heels, and their laughter filled the air, echoing around me in a dissonant chorus. I could feel their presence, whispering promises of laughter and joy, but all I could think was that I needed to get out. My mind raced as I searched for any sign of an exit. The layout was like a maze, twisting and turning. Doors flanked me on either side, but as I reached for one, it swung open to reveal nothing but a wall of darkness behind it. I stumbled back, bumping into something cold and hard. One of the children. "Where are you going?" the boy asked, grinning widely, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Just let me go," I shouted, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I was terrified of them, yet their innocent faces made it hard to fully accept the danger they represented. "You can't leave. We're playing." The girl's voice cut through the air, cheerful yet tinged with something menacing that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I pushed past the boy, desperate to keep moving. I shoved my way through the shadows, feeling them brush against me like brittle fingers. I needed to find the way out before my choices shrunk down to nothing, leaving me stranded in whatever dreadful game they wanted to play. The air crackled with electricity, and I felt the sensation of being watched from every angle. I glanced back, heart racing, and saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the corridor. It was tall and pulsating, with eyes that glowed like embers watching, waiting. I swallowed hard. Fear weighed down my limbs, but panic pushed me to keep going. Then I saw an exit sign flickering weakly at the far end of the corridor. A real, honest-to-goodness exit. Light. Hope flooded through me as I directed my feet toward it. I could almost taste freedom. The laughter behind me grew louder, more frantic. "You can't leave us," they shouted, their voices merging into a cacophony that echoed in my skull. With every ounce of strength I had left, I sprinted towards the exit. My heart pounded. I reached out for the door, fingers wrapping around the handle. But just as I turned it, the shadows surged forward, encircling me. I felt the coldness wash over my skin as their voices rose to a fever pitch. "Stay and play." I twisted the handle and burst through the door, not knowing what lay beyond. I stumbled into a room filled with hospital equipment, the sterile smell of antiseptic hitting me like a wave. It was quiet, too quiet, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I'd escaped. That relief was short-lived. As I caught my breath, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. My heart sank. I wasn't alone. Then I spotted something strange in the corner of the room, a small, battered teddy bear. One I was missing, and it was covered in dust, like it hadn't been touched in years. A chill ran down my spine as I realized its presence was wrong. It was too out of place in a hospital. That's when I noticed the faint echoes of laughter again, this time taunting. The shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. I wasn't free after all. I needed to find a way out before the children and whatever dark force manipulated them found me again. But as I stood frozen with fear, I felt an overwhelming sense that something far worse awaited me in the next moment. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the cold, sterile walls. I pressed my back against the door, heart racing in my chest. At any moment, I expected to see a figure emerge from the shadows. I scanned the room, searching for anything I could use. The bear's fur looked matted and old, but it felt oddly familiar, tugging at a memory I couldn't reach. The hospital equipment glinted under the harsh fluorescent light, surgical tools, for stands, ominous machines. They felt foreign, but they provided a sense of safety, at least for a moment. Then a thought hit me. What if I could hide? The room had a closet, and it was just small enough to fit me inside if I crouched low. I had to be quick. I dashed silently toward it, but just as I reached the door, the footsteps stopped. An icy hand snaked around my throat, tightening just enough to hold me in place. Playtime isn't over, a voice hissed, laced with glee. I twisted to look, but the shadowy figure had shifted, merging perfectly with the darkness. I fought to breathe, panic surging through me. I shoved the closet door open with all my strength and ducked inside, pressing myself against the back wall. I held my breath, desperate to calm my racing heart. Through the slits in the door, I could see the room. The shadow drew closer, and the laughter returned, swirling around me like a storm. It seemed to seep through the cracks of the closet, wrapping around my limbs like ivy, heavy and suffocating. Something struck the floor just outside the closet, making me jump. I peered through the gap in the door and caught sight of the teddy bear. It rolled gently to a stop in my line of sight. Had it moved? The hairs on my arms stood on end. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Scrawled across the floor, in what looked like dirt or dried blood, were words, "Find us." My heart pounded. Who were they? What was the game? The darkness cast uneasy shadows, twisting shapes that seemed to ripple as they danced under the flickering fluorescent lights. I clutched my knees tighter, biting down on my lip to suppress the whimpers that threatened to escape. Just then, I heard the shadow whisper, hiding one help. You never left. The taunting laughter erupted, sending a chill deep into my bones. Suddenly, the room flooded with bright light. I squinted as the shadows recoiled, and for a brief moment, I saw everything clearly. A group of children gathered outside, peering in with wide eyes. Their innocent faces were creepy in this context, but they didn't seem threatening. Yet I sensed the danger lurking beneath their smiles. Come out and play. One of them yelled, voice sweet and melodic. It felt like a trap. I backed further into the closet. I couldn't trust any of them. What did they want from me? With no clear answer, I hesitated, still fixed in place as I weighed my escape. Then, the lights flickered again, dimming once more. The shadows crept back, and a wave of dread washed over me. The children's laughter twisted into something unrecognizable. I had to act. I couldn't hesitate much longer. Just as I steeled myself to burst from my hiding place, a sharp sound pierced the air, a metallic clang blending with the laughter. I froze, heart in my throat. Someone else had entered the room, and this time, it felt different. The dread I sensed turned to outright terror. What was waiting for me beyond the closet door? I held my breath as I heard the clang again, a sound that felt foreign and alarming. The laughter faded, leaving only the echoing noise, like a warning siren in a chilling dream. Time felt suspended, and an earthy scent filled the air, mixing with the sterile smell of the hospital. Suddenly, the closet door rattled. I pressed myself closer to the wall, willing myself to become part of the shadows. Heavy footsteps approached, echoing on the floor, deliberate and slow. I couldn't see anything, but I felt the looming presence. Whatever was out there knew exactly where I was. Come out, a voice called, low and smooth. It dripped with a false sweetness, the kind that made my skin crawl. We only want to play with you. The name sounded familiar, piercing through my terror. The voice belonged to one of the children, the one with bright hair and wide blue eyes. Something clicked. I remembered her gentle smile before everything changed. With a trembling hand, I gripped the closet handle. I might have a chance to break free. But just as I calculated my move, the shadow shifted outside, revealing a sliver of a figure. A face stared in with those haunting blue eyes. They gleamed with an unsettling mixture of excitement and hunger. "What's the matter?" she asked, tilting her head. "Don't you want to join our fun? We've been waiting so long." The other children joined her, their faces pressing against the glass. I could almost hear the whisper of their little breaths, the way they beckoned with innocent smiles that betrayed their true nature. But their eyes told a different story. Dark, endless depths filled with secrets I was desperate not to uncover. Something clattered hard against the floor again, and a flash of silver caught my attention. I could see a scalpel now, glinting under the fluorescent lights, rolling closer to my hiding spot. Breathless, I realized I was not just hiding from the children. I was hiding from something much worse. What were they doing with that blade? No, 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 I muttered, shaking my head. I couldn't stay here. I needed to move. I glanced back at the door, and the children were closer now, fingers gripping the edge with anticipation. In an instant, I yanked the closet door open and burst out. I didn't know where to run, but I had to break their hold. The room felt too big and too small all at once. The walls whispered, and the shadows encroached. I darted to the far end of the room, mind racing, but as I turned, I slammed into the wall. Panic surged through me, blinding my thoughts. Was there another way out? The children's giggles echoed, bouncing off the walls as they danced toward me, parting like the sea but never letting me escape. Join us! They sang in unison. I felt trapped in their harmonized invitation. But then I saw an exit sign glowing faintly amid the chaos, too far but maybe the only option. Gathering every ounce of strength, I sprinted toward it. But right when I thought I could make it, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking my path. It wore a lab coat, stained and torn, face obscured but recognizable, the same one I'd seen in fleeting visions. It stepped forward, and all I could feel was dread. "It's not your time yet," it said, voice echoing like an old record stuck on a track. Before I could react, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on a cold floor. The sterile smell of the hospital lingered, mixed with something damp and rusted. I felt disoriented, like waking from a bad dream that somehow felt all too real. The overhead lights buzzed above me, flickering intermittently, plunging the room into brief darkness. I pushed myself up, my heart racing. The room was empty now, but the laughter haunted my ears, echoing from the corners. I recalled the faces of the children, their smiles stretching too wide, too eager. I was alone, but I could still feel their presence, like whispers of cold air brushing against my skin. Scrambling to my feet, I glanced around the space. It was a small room with cracked linoleum floors and old medical equipment scattered about. The stark reality of my surroundings sent another wave of panic through me. Where had the figure in the lab coat gone? What were those children planning? I took a tentative step forward. "Hello." My voice sounded small and lost. Silence answered me, but it felt heavy, almost suffocating. I moved cautiously toward the door on the far wall, my pulse pounding in my ears. Each creak of the floor sounded like a warning. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard it again, the scraping sound, so familiar now. It was coming from behind me. I turned, dread pooling in my stomach. The scalpel lay on the floor, glinting in the light. It was moving, sliding toward me as if it were alive. I stumbled back, barely catching myself. Panicking, I looked for something, anything to defend myself. My eyes fell on an old metal cart tucked in a corner, barely held together. I dashed toward it, yanking open the drawers. Empty. My heart sank. I could feel the scalpel drawing closer as time seemed to freeze. Then I spotted it, an old, rusted fire extinguisher. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I grabbed it just as the scalpel clattered and stopped, mere feet from me. The silence was almost deafening. Suddenly, soft giggles erupted, breaking the stillness. Fear gripped me as I looked around quickly, trying to pinpoint the source. The children's faces reappeared at a window, grinning mischievously. Their eyes glinted with mischief, unlike any innocence I once thought I recognized. "Why won't you play with us?" one of the girls whined, pouting slightly. "It's so much fun here." "I'm not playing," I shot back, my voice firmer than I felt. "You need to leave me alone." The laughter amplified, echoing through the room, reverberating incessantly. It was like a siren's call. I could feel the weight of their gaze, demanding, insistent. With no other options, I turned back to the door and twisted the knob, but it wouldn't budge. "Let us make a deal," another girl chimed in, stepping closer to the window frame. "You can stay with us forever, like a secret just for us." I pressed my palm against the door, desperation clawing at my throat. "No. I want tea," I shouted, but the words fell flat in the swirling disarray around me. That's when I saw an unexpected movement in the corner of my eye. A shadow shifted again, larger this time, looming over me from the hallway. It was the figure in the lab coat. And it was not alone. "Step away from the door," it commanded, voice low and menacing. My breath caught in my throat as I prepared to face whatever was coming next. This was only the beginning. The figure moved closer, its footsteps heavy against the linoleum. Panic rose in my chest like a tidal wave. I held the fire extinguisher tightly, feeling its cold metal seep into my palms. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, though my voice trembled. The children continued to giggle from outside. It was unnerving, a cruel soundtrack to my escalating dread. The lab-coated figure came into full view, a tall, shadowy outline against the flickering lights. I could finally see its face, a mask of calm that felt rather unsettling amid the chaos. "You need to come with me," it said simply, as if it were routine. "There are things you must understand." "Understand what?" I shot back, taking a step back toward the door. I was trapped, cornered by a stranger with no real explanation, while whispers of laughter danced in the air around me. "They want to help you," it said, gesturing to the window where the children pressed their faces against the glass. Their wide smiles made my skin crawl. "They're misunderstood." An icy breeze swept through the room, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel the children's eyes boring into me. Misunderstood? They're not real. My heart raced faster. The figure tilted its head slightly, a strange expression crossing its face, one I couldn't quite decipher. "What if I told you they're very real, and so is their world? You've just been chosen to join." I couldn't process what I was hearing. Just yesterday, I'd been living a normal life. Now I was here, in a warped version of reality, with eerie children and a faintly menacing stranger. Why would I want to join them? I asked, backing up further. The doorknob felt cold against my hand, and I twisted it again, desperately. "Because you're afraid." The figure's eyes glinted under the harsh light as it stepped forward. "Fear is a choice. Just like joining us can be." Something in its voice was persuasive. I shook my head and raised the extinguisher, ready to use it if necessary. "Stay back." At that moment, the children pressed harder against the window, their laughter rising to a frenzied pitch. One of the girls, her face distorted by the glass, leaned in and whispered harshly, "You can't escape. We've been waiting." Every instinct in me screamed to run. I turned to bolt for the back room but froze when I saw another shadow looming just behind the figure in the lab coat, a second person, silhouetted and indistinct. "What is happening?" My voice cracked, fear lodging in my throat. The first figure didn't flinch. "You're about to find out." Then, without warning, the lights flickered off completely, plunging me into darkness. The children's laughter morphed into disembodied wails that echoed off the walls. I scrambled back, disoriented, as the world around me dissolved into chaos. "Help!" I shouted, but my cries felt swallowed by the void. I could sense movement all around me, but it felt disjointed. I tried to control my breathing, but the panic threatened to overtake me. I was not alone, and whatever was about to happen next was beyond anything I could have imagined. I awoke again, heart pounding, blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights that flooded the room with a sterile brightness. I lay on the floor beside the battered old fire extinguisher, a sense of disorientation washing over me. It took a moment for my mind to catch up, but then I remembered the laughter, the children, and the looming figure in the lab coat. Panic surged within me. I pushed myself to a sitting position, scanning the room. Everything appeared normal. No shadows danced at the corners of my vision, and the children's laughter had faded to a mere whisper in the recesses of my mind. But I knew better than to trust the silence. Suddenly, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway, deliberate and slow. I had to move, I had to find a way out. I scrambled to my feet and rushed toward the door. It opened easily under my trembling hand, leading to a corridor that looked eerily familiar. Memories of navigating the hospital flooded back. It was the pediatric wing. Shadows twisted along the walls, and I could feel the shadows shift with me, following me. The laughter returned, soft yet insistent, urging me to turn back. I pressed on, heart racing, but every step felt like it was pulling me into their grasp. I had to escape. As I raced down the corridor, I caught sight of the playroom, the door slightly ajar, revealing a faint glow inside. Against my better judgment, I approached, desperate for answers. Perhaps I had missed something earlier that could explain everything. What was it about those children? I pushed the door open slowly, teeth clenched in fear. Inside was just as I remembered, toys scattered across the floor, untouched. The air felt thick, charged with tension. I stepped inside cautiously, scanning the room. It was empty, but the very emptiness sent chills down my spine. "Why did you leave us?" A voice echoed from the shadows. I whipped around, and there they were, the two shadowy figures, watching me with those glowing eyes. I froze. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, forcing an angry edge into my voice, though my legs urged me to flee. Their laughter rippled through the air, wrapping around me like a gentle caress. "You can't escape," the girl's voice sang, her tone a mix of mischief and sadness. "You belong with us now." "No. I don't." The words erupted from me, desperate to create separation. But deep down, I felt a familiar pull, a connection, like a strand tying me to their world. "What is this place? What do you want?" But the shadows flickered again, and my resolve began to waver. The room darkened, the shadows thickening around me. A part of me yearned to let go, to embrace whatever it was they were offering. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Just then, from the dimness, the lab-coated figure emerged. "It's time to choose," it said softly, gliding toward me with an otherworldly calm. "Choose what?" I gasped, ignoring the way my heart quickened at its presence. "Whether you want to join them or keep running." A cacophony of laughter erupted, so haunting, so desolate. I felt the weight of their presence, a storm waiting to crash. The children's faces morphed into something more sinister, their innocent smiles cracked into macabre grins, their eyes shining with something dark. "No!" I cried, the decision grasping at my throat. I began to back away, instinctively rushing for the door, but the laughter crescendoed. The children called to me, their voices blending into a haunting melody. It was captivating, seductive, beckoning me into the depths of their world. Suddenly, without thinking, I dashed toward the far corner, the heavy feeling of dread surging through me. The room became a blur as I fought to escape the looming darkness. I reached a wall, gasping in despair. Nowhere to go. But then, that small flicker of hope emerged, the window. It appeared as an old forgotten portal, slightly cracked open. I had to take the chance. With trembling hands, I edged closer, heart racing. I had to leap, I had to take me back to reality, whatever that meant. I turned, facing the figure and the children, whose laughter echoed louder, with desperation enveloping my heart. I climbed onto a nearby table, grasping the frame of the window. The shadows twisted as if to take hold of me one final time, whispering sweetness in my ear. "Stay with us forever." "No!" I screamed, my last remnant of courage propelling me through the window. I hurled myself upward and felt the cool night air rush around me as if the shadows were clawing at my heels. And then, just like that, I was free, tumbling to the ground outside the hospital, gasping, breathless, heart racing. The laughter faded into the night air, fading like a haunting melody turned distant. I looked back at the hospital, shivers running down my spine, not quite believing what had happened, what had chased me. Confused and terrified, I scurried away from the building. The children, their lab-coated figure, and the world they offered remained tethered, lurking behind the veil of reality. I kept walking, not looking back. But I still wondered if their whispers would ever return. I couldn't shake the feeling that I would always carry a part of that darkness within me. After all, their laughter still echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder that while I had escaped, that world was only ever one step away.